Okay, good evening and welcome to the latest live edition of Last Bell Boxing. Tonight we're joined by regulars Chris and Andy. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening, Carl.
Right, Carl. All right, Chris.
Good evening.
Good evening, Andy. How you doing?
Yeah, good, mate.
So tonight, guys, we're going to be talking about the weekend card at Dazn at the Ali Pala. We're going to run through the card. Then we're going to talk about latest developments of Tyson Fury versus Dillian White and, the debacle, what is. I'm sure we'll touch on a few other topics as we roll through the show as well. So, Andy, I'll pass over to you first to start cantering us through the card of the Dazn card at the weekend, and we'll give a breakdown. Over to you.
Okay. In no particular order, I've taken this off of the Dazn website, not quite updated, and Chris is going to have to remind me who Hopi Price is fighting.
He's fighting a guy called Ricardo Roman, a Mexican guy. Quite a tough guy, actually. He's got so Hopi Price is 6-0 and 2 KOs. The chap he's fighting, Ricardo Roman, 14-12-3. So you kind of look at sometimes those records and you wonder, what's he actually going to learn here? He's going to learn a lot because even though the guy's been beat 12 times, Andy, he's only actually been knocked out or stopped 5 times. And he's actually fought in reasonably good company. As you say, when you look at Hopi Price coming through, 6 wins, 2 by KO, yeah, you can see this one being a distance fight.
He'll learn a lot from this.
It's a learning fight, clearly, isn't it?
Yeah. And these guys are good, aren't they? To get the fighters on and to actually make them go rounds and actually think about what they're doing, because the guy will not necessarily come to survive because he's Mexican. He'll always come to throw a few punches. We love that Mexican come forward style, and I think he'll learn more in that fight than say he did in his last 2 fights.
You're always going to get with these Mexicans. You're always going to get, especially with a fighter with that sort of a record. That type of fighter's learned how to survive.
Yeah.
The only thing that interests me is I believe Hopi Price has already been lined up to fight on the Warrington card as well. So I think they're counting the chickens here a little bit.
He is. He's due out for March again, as you say. That's already scheduled on BoxRec. We can see that. I think with these Mexicans, like sometimes they'll throw a surprise in, won't they? I always remember Sky years ago had that chap who ended up fighting and winning the WBF title, James Hare, and he was beat by a guy called Riviera, who came over and his record was like this, with about 12 defeats on it, if you remember that fight, and he really schooled James Hare that night. So, we just never know what these guys are capable of, and sometimes they come to win, sometimes they come to lose, so it's going to be an interesting fight.
Little comment in the sidebar from Boxing Ramble. Price looks a top talent. I agree with you, mate. He does look a top talent. Very early days, and this is going to go a long way to seeing where he's currently at.
Yeah,
he's only 21 though. He's a baby in 10. But I like the fact that he's southpaw. Being a southpaw myself, so I'm all wrong for you two. Don't ever think you can get in the ring with me. I'm all wrong for you, Chris. You won't want it. You won't want that backhand. So the southpaw, I do like the way they take some working out. Yeah. So he's got talent players.
What do you make of his height? He's a super bantamweight, isn't he? And he's coming in at 5'8".
Yeah, it would suggest that he won't be hanging around at that weight forever, doesn't it?
Yeah, but it's like one of these fighters. We kind of see it now more and more, don't we? Fighters jumping 2 or 3 weights. But this one, you could probably see him just completely missing out. The next weight up. Like featherweight. Going straight to super feather as his body fills out.
I'm not sure, Chris, because he's like we just said, he's still a very young lad.
Yeah.
He developed till he's 24, 25. By that point, he may have done the 2 weights, depending on how quickly they move him.
Yeah. But he's a talent. He's got that Leeds fan base behind him as well. Obviously they had him out at Headingley, and again, if they get him out the first direct, I think with Josh Warrington, Ebony Bridges, if she claims to be Leeds, and Hopi Price, it'll be some night for the Leeds fanatics that night.
Yeah.
Just hope he comes through this unscathed and don't get any cuts then.
Yeah.
A little bit of a risk, as Cole's just touched on. It's a little bit of a risk putting him in this fight, really.
Yeah.
You'd have thought they might have waited.
there's nothing in the chap's record to suggest he's a banger. Out of his 14 wins, he's knocked 5 out, but that doesn't tell the story, and I think we've seen that in the fight on Saturday night. Sometimes punching's all about timing rather than punch power. In the Liam Williams-Chris Eubank fight. And, again, Hopi Price, has he actually been banged on the chin in the 6 fights he's actually had properly?
And typically Mexican come to fight, don't they? Because he come from humble beginnings as a rule, if I'm honest. He ain't going to be coming over here not giving his all. It only takes a clash of heads or something like that. So let's see.
Yeah, that'll be an interesting one when it comes through. Looking forward to that one.
Just out of interest, Boxing Rambo, how do you see this? Where do you think Opie can go? Moving on, while we're waiting for Boxing Rambo to reply on that, Jordan Reynolds is going against CJ Wood, I believe. Both of these guys have really only just started out. They're proper babies.
Andy, has this not been cancelled since that list, though? Hasn't he felt, I'm sure he's unwell, his opponent. I think so, Andy. I think I read something on social media.
It has been removed from the box rec as well.
Has there been anything else put on, do you know?
We've got 8 fights in total on box rec now, according to it. So I don't think there's been anything added on that is sticking out for me. I think there's a kind of intriguing one there where Eddie's popped on the American, but I think he was always on the card.
What I would say about Jordan Reynolds is he really works his social media. He clearly understands the value that social media can bring in terms of getting a following, because he absolutely hammers his socials, and fair play to him.
Yeah. Chris,
you may have a more definitive card list than me then, because I've only got 7 fights. I took from Dazn, so let's go with what you've got.
Okay, so probably we can miss out the first couple, because I don't think there's anything majorly in them. It's just guys who are 2-0, so they're just coming through. We've probably not really seen them, but I think probably the first one that we've all really seen is Johnny Fisher against Gabriel Enigma, who is a Spanish journeyman, for want of a better phrase. He's 10-11. Obviously Johnny Fisher 4-0, 4 KOs. I've seen all his fights. Big ticket seller, apparently.
Yeah, massive.
He's actually sold the best part of 3,000 tickets for this fight on his own.
Yeah. Well, what do you make of him, though? Obviously he's 4 fights in. It's really easy to kind of turn around and be critical of fighters, in this day and age. He's a big lad, a big lump.
I don't think there's anything to be critical of. He didn't have a stellar amateur career. But for 4-0, I think he looks quite polished.
See, I just think he's done what he should have done. I haven't got really an opinion on how good he's going to be, because it's too early. He's just blasting people out at the minute, isn't he?
Yeah. It's a difficult one to stay. I suppose what we could do is kind of compare him to, say, Fabio Worley at this stage. And I think if we compare the two, I'll probably be more impressed with Fisher without wanting to shout about him really highly than I was with Wardley. But again, Wardley's background was white-collar boxing, wasn't it? I think Johnny Fisher's actually got a reasonable pedigree without actually, having an extensive amateur career.
Yeah, Andy, do you want to put them comments up, fella?
Yeah, Boxing Rambo says, I think he looks the real deal. I believe he's from a travelling background, so has good fundamentals. And he's asking if he can jump on, Carl. So do you want to drop him the link in the bar? You're more than welcome to come on, mate.
You might just want to add that's about Opie Price and not about Johnny Fisher, by the way.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, that was the reply from the Opie Price, I believe. We've also got Matt Nash on. Evening, fella. Fisher is very likeable, comes across well, looks talented. No need to rush. Completely agree. I saw an interview with him that I think Coogan did. He looked really good in that. He come across really well. He likes to put across that he's just one of the lads.
Yeah.
Apparently these tickets he sold, he could have sold another couple of thousand on top of that if they'd have given him. I mean, he's been turning people away.
Eddie Earns rubbing his hands together into Eddie Earns rubbing his hands together into this one.
Well, he's just he's a very likable, like Matt's just said, he's a very likable lad.
Mm.
You know, he says the right things, he does the right things, and there's no bull there.
Yeah. But that raises a question, though, lads. Do you think Eddie's made a mistake going to Ali Pali with this one? Then, do you think he could have maybe sold out not necessarily all of the O2, but you can actually close off the top bit of the O2? He could have sold out, maybe 10,000 tickets for it rather than Ali Pali.
You do lose a bit. Of the atmosphere, though, don't you? When you do that.
The problem is, Chris, it all depends on where he puts Johnny Fisher on the card.
Mm.
If he uses his brain, he needs to be quite high up. I know he's only 4-0.
Yeah.
But if he sold 3,000 tickets, that's what, a third of the crowd?
Yeah.
If he puts him on too early, you could see half of them disappear.
Yeah. I think you've got to put him on the Sky show as well, the Dazn show. We've had all these fights on it so far, so we've got to keep following his journey.
Oh, no, he'll definitely be on that. I'm just thinking he needs to be as high up the card as possible to keep the crowd in.
No, totally. I can see him coming in, maybe, the third fight from the end, Is it where we just Felix Cash and Jacobs above it?
Good evening, Boxing Ramble.
Hello, boys. You right?
Very good.
And
would you like to introduce?
Yeah, I just agree with you, really. Speaking about the few early fights, I think, Johnny Fisher, he's very much up and coming. I think the danger with him is, in a way, being similar to what happened with, forgive me, I forget his name. The Liverpool bronze medalist, what's his name?
David Price.
Yeah, David Price, yeah. I think hyping him up too early, I think maybe a danger of that. But apart from that, I think, it's a wait and see with him, really.
But do you not think that as we move on now, we're probably seeing less and less the record is becoming the thing that sells now? People are enjoying the night, aren't they? They're enjoying the boxing. And I think if a boxer has 1-2 defeats now, it's not necessarily putting people off anymore. I think the TV companies maybe got that a little bit wrong. They kind of followed the Mike Tyson model. Let's get that O in the back of it. But now, it's all about getting good competitive matchups. And I don't think, say, Steve Robinson would not get another slot in a card on Sky after that defeat on Saturday. So same with Hopey Price and Johnny Fisher. If they lost, we would see them again, I think.
Well, it has been done in the past, Chris, hasn't it? When you think about DeGale versus Groves, that was a big Irish fight for both of them. And DeGale bounced back, and you could argue end up having a better career than Groves in many aspects. Sometimes it's worth jumping in for that big fight at British level or early in your career, because it does wonders for your presence and your profile.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just back to the comments bar. Hump one is echoed kind of what we're saying. Fisher needs to be high up on the card. Otherwise, his 2,000 fans will be off before the main event and then turn into a shit atmosphere. It is right. It is what it is. And Eddie Earn's a smart character. I'm sure he's going to be right up there. I can't imagine he's going to be above the Felix Cash fight.
No.
I think that'll be the second to main, but I think he might be third to main, maybe.
But as we've all said, there's no need to rush him. The British title is a good level for him to probably aspire to, isn't it, at this stage? And the way that all the British heavyweights are going, at one point that title will just become available. And I think if Johnny Fisher's mark's right, then we could see him in some good
I think it's an achievement winning that British heavyweight title at the minute, because there's some big names hanging around that title, isn't there?
Yeah.
Do you know what's really refreshing as well? Is he's not acting the Billy Big Bollocks. He's saying it how it is. Look, I've only had 4 fights. I mean, no rush. Coogan was trying to push him and force him into calling a few people out. He wasn't interested in doing that. He's not bothered. Yeah. He knows where he's at. He knows he's only had 4 fights. He knows he's a novice, and he's taking things at the right pace. Interestingly, this Gabriel that he's fighting went the distance with Oscar Rivas.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a little bit of a yardstick.
Yeah.
That's going to give you a bit of an idea of where he's at.
I mean, just commenting the sidebar from the Zodiac, Fisher, ... he thinks he's Gorman 2.0 a bum. I think that's a bit harsh on Nathan Gorman, to be honest. I think if Gorman gets motivated, he belongs in and amongst that British heavyweight title, to be honest.
The problem is Gorman doesn't get motivated.
No.
He's had his chances. Fisher's proved he's been on it when he's needed to be on it.
Yeah.
We'll see, won't we? We'll see.
He's a good yardstick, though, Gorman is. He's a very good
He is.
yardstick.
But you then get back into that kind of lower level domestic scene, don't you? You know, and someone like Johnny Fisher, he could maybe bring back on Dave Allen onto the kind of Dazn scene, or he could, you know, bring back on someone like Gorman. You know, they would be really good fights. You know, I think Dave Allen versus Johnny Fisher, you know, that'd be a decent rumble.
And I can't wait for someone to get in the ring who can fight with Babbage. Soon as someone puts him to bed, the better, because he gets absolutely on my nerves. I'll keep it clean.
So I tell you, he'll be one of the first ones Eddie lets go when he gets beat, you know.
I think Dave Allen beats him, a motivated Dave Allen. And they talk about that fight, aren't they? I would love for Dave Allen to get in with him, that Babbage. Yeah, terrible fighter.
But it's one of these things, you know.
Rivas.
Say that again, mate.
Isn't he supposed to be fighting Rivas for the Bridgerweight belt or something?
Yeah.
Talking that, but there's no money there, is there?
No.
Not yet. It's only recognised by the WBC, so it's a difficult one to really sell, isn't it? You know.
And I think the Zodiac's on a wind up because he said Babbage will KO Fisher. So I think the Zodiac's playing a wind up card because
he's also the Gorman's only motivation kebabs,
which is probably a fair shout at times. But you would wish to see more for Gorman at times. But hey, everybody's got their own career to follow, and you know when he got his big Crossroads fight, he just didn't perform, did he? Unfortunately.
No.
So if we move on up the card, then Eddie's brought on a guy called Austin Williams, who we've probably seen on social media quite a bit, called Ammo is his nickname, and a number of our fighters were calling him out. So he's 9-0, 7 KOs. And he's fighting an Argentinian called Maciel, who's got a really, really good record, 33-15, but he's only ever been knocked out twice. So, you know, I think that's a good bit of matchmaking by Eddie. He's introducing this guy who's from Milwaukee to us, you know, and I think at one point we were seeing our British fighters saying, get us ammo, weren't we? You know, and we probably didn't know who he was. So
he's got big hopes for this kid, hasn't he? The middleweight, isn't he?
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, so he's got big hopes for this kid, Eddie Hearn, and I think he's putting the Eddie Hearn marketing machine behind him, isn't there? Because he likes to bring him over to Britain, don't he, for us all to have a look.
Yeah.
So, but he's in a killer of a division, isn't he? So they better move him slowly.
Yeah. Do we know anything about him? What about you, Boxing Ramble? Have you seen Ammo?
Well, I know there was a big talk of him fighting Anthony Fowler, wasn't there? Not too long ago. But yeah, I've seen him on the undercard, but I can't really say I have a big extensive knowledge of him, unfortunately.
Yeah, 25, isn't he? So you know he's not a port. Yeah. You know, he's southpaw. So again, obviously talented like me. So he should. Let's hope he goes up through the division. Like I said, very tough division.
Yeah. Well, Eddie, as we said, he's obviously got a plan for him, and you know it's nice to see him on the undercard. You know, sometimes we get to see guys on the rise, don't we? There we go.
Zodiac, sorry, Chris, but Zodiac, you're. Is there anybody that you like, Zodiac? You know, is anybody not a bum?
So we've got a couple of international or intercontinental titles on the line, haven't we, on this card, Chris?
We have. So the next one, we've got a female fighter on Ellie Scottney. And she's stepping up to fight Georgina Guangini, we'll go with. And so that's a bantam. So that's over 10-2. So Scottney's only 3-0. She was a part of the GB squad. You know, what I've seen her quite like. You know, I think she's very much a fighter on the up. You know, she's trained a lot with the kid from Liverpool. I'm trying to think of his name. Robbie Davis Jr. She does a lot of work with Robbie Davis Jr. So, you know, I think they're actually really good friends. So, you know, it'll be interesting to see her on. We've not seen too much of her career so far, but certainly when she was an amateur, I've seen her fight a few times, and I think she's actually really decent amateur. You know? Again,
she's only had 20 rounds, hasn't she, as a pro? So it's difficult to give an opinion, isn't it?
Yeah.
5'4", let's see. I guess let's see. You can't really give an educated opinion after that amount of rounds, can you?
No.
She's obviously got some good amateur experience, though, so that stands a little bit more stead. You have to take a lot of that in context when you're talking about female fighting and their records in pro boxing, because we've already said, females can be getting world title shots after 6 or 7 fights.
Yeah.
Ellie Scott is fighting for the Intercontinental title, and this girl that she's in against has got quite a bit more experience in comparison.
Yeah.
In the pro ranks, 9-3-2. So she's been in there. She's had a few good fights. I rate Ellie Scotney. I think she's real talent. I guess time's going to tell a little bit. Yeah. This will be a good yardstick for her.
She's done what's expected of her, hasn't she? Nothing more at this stage. She didn't fight. She'd expect her to win. So it's a tough one to give an opinion on.
Yeah. I think Andy makes a good point, though. We kind of see women getting thrown in at the moment, very early stage, with limited amateur experience. And, I think we're another Liverpool fighter there at the weekend there in Carly Skelly. I don't know if you've seen her fight, against Jamie Mitchell. She was just completely outclassed. And, she just looked like she didn't know how to cope with being put under pressure. And it was a real shame for her, because when she got tagged and put down, then ultimately stopped on her feet, she maybe took a few too more than she should have done. But
yeah, I agree.
You could really see there that she didn't really have the boxing knowledge there, with only having 4 fights behind her to cope with that pressure. So sometimes in women's boxing, because there's not that depth, we are getting overmatched cards. But this one, I think, it should be a win for Scotney. You wouldn't think Eddie would put her in with someone that would necessarily hand her a defeat at this point. But we don't know enough about either of them yet. Early days, as you say.
I think that they're trying to push her into the Shannon Courtney and the Bridges thing, aren't they?
Yeah.
I think there's a rivalry, isn't there, between the Booth and the McGuigan gym, where she's just moved from. So I think ultimately that's where they're trying to push this. I think for her to fight Courtney in the not too distant future.
I'll tell you what, Bridges beats Courtney next time round.
Yeah, I think Shannon Courtney learned a heavy lesson against Jamie Mitchell. She really did. I thought she probably eked the Ebony Bridges fight anyway the first time. So if they do have a rematch, it would be interesting to see which way it goes. But there's someone who's used social media and it's worked against her, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
So moving on up to the, when we look at that, we've kind of been through the card. There's only 2 left to go. If we compare it to last week's, do we think it's as strong an opener for the zone as it was for Sky?
It's a very weak card.
Yeah,
you look at the card. You look at the card, Chris, and there's only 2 fights with British fighters in that have had more than 10 fights.
Yeah.
More than 10 fights, which for a card of this kind of magnitude, it's a bit weak.
Yeah. And I thought there was that kind of tail end spell when we were still getting matchroom shows on Sky, where we were getting bills like that, and you were kind of thinking, is that because the main fighters are getting all the money, that there was nothing there for
the main event? The main event isn't a particularly strong one in my view.
Well,
not a particularly strong one.
Tell you what, Carl, he's going to be paying Danny Jacobs a hell of a lot of money for this fight.
But he's had Danny Jacobs in a long-term contract anyway, hasn't he? Danny Jacobs was signed to Matchroom USA. He was almost one of his first fighters, which he actually signed.
Yeah.
There. So it's we'll just go to that fight then, and then we'll come back to the Felix Cash one afterwards. Danny Jacobs, he is at the tail end of his career now. And I think he's been brought over. It's maybe not a fight which excites us, but it's an interesting fight. What's your take on it, Andy?
Well, he hasn't fought since 2020, when he beat Gabrizardo in a really poor fight.
Terrible.
Awful. And it's as though he took a step back and thought, yeah, I've got to think about what I'm doing here, because that was awful. I mean, Eddie Hearn called it out. He said it weren't great. Danny Jacobs, in my opinion, if he's got any any will to want to become a world champion again, you have to do a number on John Ryder.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether he's still got it in him because he's had so long out of the ring. I think that's going to tell. It's going to take him a few rounds to get going. I think John Ryder's one of these fighters. He's just going to put it on him from round one.
Yeah.
I mean, you saw it against Smith. You know, Callum Smith never got into a groove in that fight. Mm-hmm. Everyone says, "Oh, you know, Callum Smith was off in that fight." He wasn't at his best, but you've got to give John Ryder the credit for that because he kept him out of his stride. He didn't let him settle. He didn't let him get into a groove. Very close fight as well. A lot of people had Ryder winning that, and there probably would have been a rematch if we're being fair. I can smell an upset here. I think John Ryder beats him.
How much of an upset is it though?
Yeah, it's an upset though. You know,
if you look at who they fought, it's a massive upset.
I'm talking about where they are now though.
Yeah, but you can't really say that, can you? Because you haven't seen what Danny Jacobs has got left. That last fight.
When did John Ryder last fight?
I don't know.
John Ryder's last fight was in December 20. You know, and he fought like a guy on a 10-round points decision. It was, yeah.
That's the only point I'm making.
Yeah, very, very similar. I mean,
well, he's only fought once since he fought Smith.
I wouldn't necessarily say that John Ryder's any fresher. You know, they've both got cobwebs to blow away quite clearly. But if you just look at on paper, Danny Jacobs should be blowing him away with the talent that he's been in with.
When we look at Jacobs, though, now that Jacobs is up as super middleweight, for me, he still never felt like a super middleweight, a natural.
These are both middleweights, aren't they? Let's be honest. They're both blown up middleweights. That's all they are.
Yeah. And one even question, you know, the early part of Jacobs' career, he was probably better suited at 154. Then he moved up and got absolutely wiped out by Pirog. You know, he was Golden Boy's big ticket at one point, you know. And I remember seeing him on the undercard and getting absolutely smashed. I think it was 5 rounds he got beaten. You know, then he had the unfortunate thing with the bone cancer. And he's had a good career coming back there. But, you know, on paper, as you say, you know, he's got the longer reach. He's got probably about 7 centimetres on reach against Ryder. He's got probably about 3 centimetres or 3 inches in height. I think Ryder's about, 5'8".
It looked bigger than that in the face-off today.
Jacobs is about 5'11". So, you know, you look at all the technical attributes and it should go with Jacobs. But, you know, you just think that kind of hustly, bustly style which Ryder's got, you know, if Gabrizado could do that. Because let's face it, people were thinking Gabrizado, he'd already been beat by, you know, our own Martin Murray by that point, handily, you know, and you know, had so many losses on his record. That shouldn't even have been competitive, that fight. But it was a fight that Rosado won for me.
Sean, who do you think is going to win this one, Sean?
Well, for me, you know, I know Eddie speaks a lot about 50-50 fights and whatnot, but I actually think this is. I think, you know, with John Ryder, he's sort of been there or thereabouts domestic level for a few years now. And I think with Danny Jacobs, he's been in well level, but of late he hasn't looked his best. I think really you can toss a coin for it. I mean, I wouldn't decisively pick one or the other really, but if I had to, I would just edge with John Ryder, and that's purely because of his willingness to want to win, really.
Yeah. I think for me, you know, I don't know, you know, when we look at Danny Jacobs, I thought he wasn't really competitive against Triple G and Alvarez when he fought them. You know, and it was almost like he was happy to get the fight, but I don't know how much he actually believed he could win against either of them. You know, and that's kind of how it came across for me.
I thought he did well against Golovkin. I thought he was poor against Canelo, though.
I thought that in the Golovkin fight, I remember watching it, being really disappointed with Jacobs because I thought, here's a guy that's going to come out and be a little bit slick and maybe show something that we've not necessarily seen against.
I know, but let's be honest, them two fighters can do that to any fighter, can't they?
They can, and that's the thing. They make good fighters look ordinary, don't they?
Yeah.
But
yeah.
So
I'm actually going to go for Jacobs. I think Jacobs might have that little bit too much knowledge, and they're both as inactive as each other, so that takes that advantage away from me for Ryder.
Yeah.
I know Ryder fought out his skin against Smith, and I agree that was a very, very close fight, but I just think Jacobs might be a bit too cute for him, if I'm honest. So I think he'll go to points, and I think Jacobs will win on points.
So let me comment in the sidebar, and then we'll come back and we'll get some predictions. Matt's gone. Ryder wins. Ryder wins for me. Good timing. Matchmaking in Ryder's favour.
Now, I know you two guys know the Smith brothers a little bit. You know, was there anything said about the Callum Smith-John Ryder fight? Was it an underperformance? Was he taken by surprise? Have we got any inside track in that fight at all? Or
no, it was too much speaking about Liam Smith, if I'm being brutally honest.
Yeah,
so,
right.
Yeah.
Because you just wonder sometimes whether that one fight is kind of given John Ryder, it's propelled him maybe more than his ability. Again, we don't know because he's only fought once since that fight.
Yeah.
But so what we're going for then, prediction-wise, then let's start with you, Andy.
I think John Ryder wins on points.
Comfortably, wide?
No, to be fairly close, but I think he wins on points.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Carol? Yep.
Yeah, like I've said, I'm going for Jacobs to win it on a tight points decision. Could even be split, to be honest.
Mr. Boxing Ramble, what about yourself?
Yeah, as I said, I think Ryder will win on points, but it's not a confident pick. It's just who I think will be able to get it done on the night, really.
Yeah. And I'm going to go for Ryder myself as well. I think the kind of home.
Well, I love it when I'm the only one who goes for one. I love it. Oh.
I think the hometown advantage will do him well. And, sometimes it's just, the right timing for fighters. And, I wouldn't be surprised if, and again, this is just a total gut feeling. It's nothing that I've ever seen, really. I wouldn't be surprised if Jacobs got in and looked a little bit ring-worn and shot. And I don't expect Ryder's got enough to stop him. But I certainly think it'll be one of those. I think it might be a punishing fight for Jacobs here, and I think that Ryder might club him around the ring in the later stages and take a points decision here. An interesting one. So that then brings us back to Felix Cash, which I actually think in some ways is a more intriguing fight than the headliner. I know that we've seen Felix Cash. He's on a reasonable run at the moment. And if you look at his last three fights. Jack Cullen, Jason Wellborn, Denzel Bentley, they've all been really, really terrific results. Yeah. How do you see that one going, Carol?
Well, Eddie Hearn's come out with something. I know Eddie Hearn likes to promote his fighters and sell them, but he's come out today and says that he believes that Felix Cash is the best middleweight in the country, and that's including Liam Smith. So I think this Russian guy is an absolute nutter by all accounts, so we don't quite know what he's going to do when he comes over. But I think Felix Cash is on a upwards trajectory.
Yeah.
I think he's caught the super middleweight at a good time, though. I'll be brutally honest. He's caught it at a very good time. So I think Felix Cash is going to stop this guy. I think the Russian will come out swinging for a good few rounds and try and catch him. So he might have a puncher's chance for the first 4 or 5 rounds, but I expect Felix Cash to take over the second half of the round and maybe stop him around 9. Very good boxer, Felix Cash.
Yes, I think he's underestimated, isn't he? I think sometimes people look at, guys who are reasonably handsome, as it were, and think, God, they're not real boxers for some reason, don't they? And sometimes they can suffer from that, But he's a real tidy boxer, Felix Cash.
I can understand why he's making some big statements because he needs a profile. He needs to raise his profile.
Yeah. But I thought he started to get that profile when he actually fought Cullen and then Wellborn and Bentley was coming off really 2 good wins against Mark Heffron, which were on BT. The first one was really quite a contentious points victory for Denzel Bentley. Then he came out and just absolutely dominated Mark Heffron there. So I think going into that fight, there was a number of people thinking, I can see Denzel Bentley doing a number on Cash here. And it was the other way about. How do you see the fight, Andy? What do you think of Cash as well?
Yeah, I agree. I think the Bentley fight was a big wake-up call for everybody. And I think it's put the middleweight division on alert as well. I really rate him, and he's very confident. He's dying for the Eubank fight. He's dying to take Eubank
Yeah,
on.
yeah.
A gigantic name and push him to the top of rankings.
There's a word propel you was looking for there, Andy.
I couldn't think of it, so I moved on.
No problem.
By all accounts, I don't know a lot about this Madiev that he's fighting. By all accounts, he's really good.
He is. I looked him up when the fight was announced because I hadn't really seen a great deal of him. So I've now watched 3 of his fights. So he's 15-0. He's got 4 KOs. So when you look at it, he does go the distance, and pretty much all of his last 6, 7 fights now have went the distance.
He's a pressure fighter, though, right, Chris?
What was that? Sorry.
He's a pressure fighter. Pressure fighter, I understand.
He is, but he's also a tidy boxer. And one of the things which we exchanged today on our WhatsApp was, he was also a world youth silver medalist.
Yeah.
And that shows his pedigree, because you don't win world medals, in amateurs if you're not good. So, that was a little bit of time ago. But I think for me, he's Felix Cash is a big middleweight as well. He's 6'1". And again, when he fills out, he could probably step up to 12 stone. You could see him going in there. The Russian, again, though, can match him. He's 5'11". There's not going to be much in this at all.
This is going to be the fight of the night by a country mile.
Yeah.
I agree with Carl. Felix Cash is absolute quality. I think it's a bit of a broad statement to say he's the best middleweight in Britain. But he could very easily push himself into that position.
Mm-hmm.
If he gets the right fights at the right time. My personal opinion is Eubank will go nowhere near him. He'll hide behind this mask of wanting to fight world champions. He's got other people calling him out as well, which probably make bigger paydays, if I'm being brutally honest. And we'll maybe go on touch onto that in a minute.
Yeah.
I think Cash ought to just make his own path.
Mm.
He's good enough. It's whether Eddie Hearn can match him is the problem, because if he looks too good, fighters at the next level are not going to want to go near him, are they?
Yeah. But what might be a good yardstick for Cash? We begin to see, he fought obviously Jack Cullen there, and we've seen that Kevin Saggio, the French guy, come over. That might be a nice yardstick for Felix Cash, because he did well in the Joseph Parker undercard, when he fought Chisora. But, I think Cash is decent. He's trained by Tony Sims as well, and he's got such a good stable down there, hasn't he, now, when you look at what he's got. He's done well with Ricky Burns there. He's got John Ryder with him as well, So Tony Sims really seems to get the fighters' loyalty. They stay with him a long time.
Yeah.
So... and I think fighters learn from him. And Cash is one of these guys, when I first seen him, I thought he was quite upright. I thought he's just another kind of typical kind of Londoner, as it were. But, the last few fights have really changed my opinion of him. And, he can bang a little bit as well, can't he? 14 wins, 10 KOs. He's got some power there. What do you think of him?
Yeah, I really rate him. I mean, speaking about a test for him next, I mean, I know he's more super middle now, but maybe a David Lamine may be a good test for him, just to see if he is at world level or if he is a level below that. I think that could be a good step for him next.
I mean, he's 28 though, so it's time to move a little bit now, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's his prime though, isn't it, at that age?
But you don't want to be at this level in your prime, do you?
Yeah, I think for a middleweight, you'd be hoping that they'd be kind of there 24, 25, wouldn't you, really, if they're getting there? And then in saying that, we've still got the enigma that's Eubank at 32 now, so that was an interesting one. Yeah. But, so we'll do a little round robin before we move on. So Felix Cash against this guy, Madiev, it could be a potential banana skin for him. So
are you going Madiev then, Chris?
No, I think for me, what Felix Cash did to Denzel Bentley, if he does that again here and gets an opening, I think what he's shown over the last 3 fights in particularly, he's now got that finisher's instinct, hasn't he? And when the guys are hurt, he'll try and take them out. And I think here, I'm not necessarily sure he'll stop the guy, but I think he'll hit enough, put enough on him to get a points decision. So I can see a points decision for Cash here. So if we just go around Boxing Ramble, give us your prediction, then we'll go to Andy.
I agree. I'll go with Cash on points.
I think we're going to see a career best performance from Cash, and I think he stops in round 10.
Yeah. And finally,
Yeah, I was going to go round 10, so I don't like normally going with Andy, but I'm going round 10.
great. And Dazn's opener for the year, I suppose. You know, yeah, I think we'll see how it is afterwards. You know, but yeah, maybe
It's not the way to open a year, is it?
Nah, you would have expected more, wouldn't you? You would have expected more.
Yeah.
Especially with the way Sky and Boxer have come out fighting.
Yeah.
You know, in the next 2 weeks, they've got two outstanding cards, two outstanding bills.
Yeah.
In the next 3 weeks. The following couple of weekends with Brooke Khan. You know, that's gonna make massive numbers, whether we agree with it or not.
Yeah.
No, the more that fight comes up, the more I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to the show and that one next week. You know, it'll be.
Is that it for the Dazn card? Is that the entire card covered?
That is pretty much the entire card. Yeah, as I say, there was 2 fights at the bottom, but probably not worthy of comment.
So the next topic, then we'll let Sean start on this because I bet people are sick of hearing about us talking about it. But Tyson Fury versus Dillian White, what's happening? So Sean, give us a breakdown. What do you think's going on for this fight?
Yeah, well, I mentioned it on a video on my own channel the other day that I think Dillian White being silent is quite a good thing. I mean, in a way, he doesn't need to promote this fight because his money's set from the purse bid. We know what he's getting. So in a way, it suits him not to give Warren Tyson the ammunition of him selling the fight. I mean, I think him, even if he says something at the press conference, I suspect he will, but that's by the by. I think the tactic he's going down is a good one because not bait into Fury, I think maybe give him a slight advantage.
Interesting.
I have to agree.
Sorry, I was just going to say, it looks like the venue's been it. Now, you know, the rumours are coming out that Wembley is actually going to host it. And,
Well, I hope so.
Yeah. So, you know, yeah, we'll see how that plays out, you know. So April 23rd is looking like the date for Frank Warren to come out and put that fight on.
Yeah, I mean, Eddie Hearn's mentioned about Dillian White not dancing to Tyson Fury's tune, and you know, he gets another fight his heads, i.e., the Bronze Bomber, before they even get to press conferences by doing videos, etc., etc. So I can see that, to be honest, and you know, I just believe Dillian White. You know, they're looking through the contract as we speak. I think they've got to the 23rd of February to get that contract back and get it all signed, sealed, and delivered. So I don't blame Dillian White for just sitting tight. Let Tyson keep posting these videos out. It's like Sean said, he's promoting the fight. He's not putting no hard work in. But I've got to say, I can't wait for this fight. But these people who are saying Dillian White gives him more trouble than the Bronze Bomber, in my view, that's nonsense. Absolute nonsense. This is a one-sided fight at best. I can't make a case for Dillian White doing anything in that fight.
But you know what
I'll get off the fence now.
What we've got to look at is what people have done before. Whenever Dillian White's had a big fight announced, he doesn't go like shouting about it from the rooftops. When he was fighting Parker, he didn't come out and start slagging Parker. And the only guy that he's ever done that with is AJ. You know, and I think because he got knocked out by AJ, I think he realised, hey, maybe this isn't the way to do it. He does it in the 1-to-1 specials, which he did show on Sky. You know, probably do it on Dazn. But it's not his style to come out. You know, I would like him to come out and say something, mind you. You know, I think the fact he hasn't said anything, you know, I would just like him to say, yeah, I'm going to take the fight. Then disappear if you want.
The problem is they've been sent a contract, and if you believe who you want to believe on this, but if you believe what Eddie Hearn's saying, there's a lot of stuff in that contract that they don't agree with. A lot of nonsense, as Eddie Hearn put it. And if that's the case, Dillian White, he's come out and said stuff in the past when he thinks he's going to get a world title shot, and then he's made to look stupid because it doesn't happen. So maybe he's being a little bit shy until the ink's dry on the contract, until he sees his signature next to Tyson Fury's signature. Why would you come out and say anything?
But here's a question for you, Ant. How involved do you think Eddie Hearn actually is with this contract negotiation? Because the fact he wasn't even involved initially.
He's as involved as Dillian White wants him to be.
Correct. And he said that on numerous platforms, hasn't he?
Yeah.
He didn't win the purse bid. So ultimately, he's really got nothing to do with it. I mean, he's on a fight-by-fight with Dylan. I personally think Dylan's going to go to Sky Sports and boxer, in my view.
Well, I think that's a fair shout because, there was a fantastic interview with Alex Steedman and Ben Shalom, where they were actually talking about how his involvement came about, and people were thinking, was he involved in big protracted negotiations? He wasn't. He was called in at the last minute by Dillian White's lawyer. And he was called in at, say, 5:30 when the purse bids were finishing at 6 to try and thrash something out. So, they obviously have that respect for Ben Shalom. So, the fact that Eddie wasn't even involved there, moving over to boxer and Sky in the future, decent shout. You can see it.
And let's be honest, Frank Warren's not going to want the all singing or dancing Eddie Hearn anywhere near them press conferences, is it?
No, not at all.
That's really what this is about. It's not about whether Dillian White's leaving Eddie Hearn. Dillian White's never had a contract with Eddie Hearn.
No.
Never signed a contract with Eddie Hearn. It's all been a fight-by-fight basis. But the fact of the matter is, Eddie Hearn pays the big bucks. Dillian White was never going to go anywhere else because there wasn't another platform for him.
Yeah.
Now you've got Boxer. And Ben Shalom's doing a great job. Clearly, there's a bit of a relationship there with Dillian and Ben. Whether Dillian White has Ben sat with him at the top table for this fight or not,
No,
I don't think he will.
no odds. It makes no difference whatsoever. All it'll mean is it'll be a smoother press conference because quite clearly they don't want Eddie Hearn anywhere near it. And if they can get away with not having him anywhere near it, if it makes the fight smoother, so be it.
Yeah. But technically, he shouldn't be anywhere near it. He's got nothing to do with it, as we've said earlier, and like, can you imagine if Warren turned up at one of his press conferences and saying, "Where's my seat?" Job done.
If he's there on behalf of Dillian White, then he's got the right to be there. He's there as Dillian White's manager stroke promoter, then he's got the right to be there because at the minute, Dillian White hasn't stuck his flag to anybody, has it?
No, but Dillian White's team, really, I think, from what we can make out, is his solicitor, his brother, and Dillian White. And that's probably his team. Then under that, the boxers which he manages. I don't think Eddie's got a space at that table necessarily at the moment. And I don't think he'll necessarily have one going into the future either.
I don't know. I think for me, I think Eddie Hearn will act as his manager for this fight. For the press conference, I can see them sending Frank Smith. He's a sort of plain guy. He won't ruff up too many feathers. But I think long term, I can see him having a relationship with Matchroom. And that's purely because they seem to sort of base their relationship on a handshake. And
I'll have a point on it with you that says Frank Smith ain't nowhere near that press conference.
No,
nobody from Matchroom will be on that top table.
The one thing which Dazn just can't guarantee at the moment is the purse which you could on Sky Box Office.
Yeah,
and I've said before on this platform that I think Dillian White, while he is a boxer, is probably more of a money orientated fighter than I've came across before. He's a businessman to a certain degree. So for me, money will talk there. And one thing which really impressed me on Saturday night between the Clarissa Shields and Savannah Marshall, didn't Ben Shalom come across really well on television again on Saturday night? And this kid's grown in stature now, and for the age of him, he's beginning to.
I'd argue that a little bit, Chris, because I don't think he's the greatest talker. I am measuring him against Eddie Hearn in that, but I admit that. But when Clarissa Shields and Savannah Marshall were going at it, I thought he looked lost.
I think
I know what you're saying, but what I said was he's grown in stature because I think he threw a little grenade there, then let it go. Sorry, Andy, what you got to say?
Right thing there, Cole. He didn't say nothing, just let them both go at it.
It was I didn't particularly rate him, and I didn't particularly rate him in the lead up, in the presses. You know, I'm only giving my opinion. I think he's a very shrewd business person, obviously, because he's a very good matchmaker and putting the fights together.
Yeah.
But he's got a lot to learn in front of the camera.
Yeah.
He was on Talk Sport today on the boxing show that they do around 12 o'clock lunchtime, and he was great.
Yeah.
He come across really, really well. Maybe because he wasn't in front of a camera, perhaps. Maybe he was a little bit more relaxed because he does come across like a kind of a shy character when it comes to being in front of the camera. Maybe that could.
He reminds me of me, Andy.
Oh yeah, you're dead shy.
Yeah, he reminds me of me. Yeah.
But if you check out boxing, if you've not listened to it, it's probably old hat now. But 2 weeks ago, he was on the Boxing News podcast, and he did a long interview talking about what he did with the Dillian White negotiations. But if you take before that, he actually talked about how he came through, what happened, how he got involved with Sky. It was actually very, very impressive, and it's probably the first time I've really listened to him and came away thinking, you know what, yeah, I'm beginning to buy into your story now. You know, before I thought, is he just some guy getting led by Sky? But you know, I think a lot of the ideas are genuinely his, and I think his design, you know, for where he wants to take boxing is in his mind, and he wants
they've come a long way because I think I'm okay saying it. Carl Greaves has been involved with boxing since the beginning, obviously in various roles. And I did say to Carl, and I hope you don't mind me saying this, in an exchange that we had, I didn't particularly like the early stuff from boxing. I didn't like the DJ in the corner on Channel 5, I believe it was, when they was trying to make it all modern.
No.
But I've got to admit, they've come a long, long way, haven't they?
Yeah.
You know, and let's be honest, a vehicle which is Sky Sports would enhance any promotional company, because all of a sudden you've got Sky Sports News behind you. He signs a fighter, they're on Sky Sports News. Then they're doing a behind the round table before the fight. The exposure that Sky Sports gives a boxer is probably right up there, if not the best in Europe, the world.
Yeah.
Whereas all of a sudden, Eddie Hearn's took his stable to Dazn, and they're trying to replicate that platform and that vehicle, but they're nowhere near it yet, are they?
Yeah.
Well, they were banking on getting BT, and that was going to be their way to do that. And now they've not got that because that's fell through. They're going to find it difficult. There's going to be a lot of fighters coming through that are going to be great fighters in that Matchroom stable, and no one other than proper boxing fans like ourselves, no one in the general public are going to know anything about them.
Yeah.
It's already happening, isn't it? And you think about Marku, not massive names, don't get me wrong, but Florian Marku's left for boxer.
Yeah.
You know,
It was an interesting one, wasn't it? Because he wasn't a star, don't get us wrong, but you could kind of see that rivalry coming up between, say, him and a Conor Ben or whatever, you know, and all of a sudden he flips over, you know. But, you know, it's interesting, boxer, you know, those first early shows when they had like the kind of tournament, what was it, the Golden Robe, I didn't even watch them. You know, that's how much I didn't like the shows and the presentation, you know, so it has come a long way, and he's done something which is quite exciting, actually, I suppose.
Let's be honest, Chris, to get Carl Greaves on board is a very, very shrewd move. Like I said, I don't know what capacity he's in, you know, I'm not going to start.
Matchmaker.
Yeah. I believe they could utilise him even more, couldn't they?
Yeah, absolutely. He is probably the best matchmaker in Britain at the moment. You know, he took over, you know, that kind of role. You know, from the guy who passed away, Dean. You know, he was probably the best matchmaker. But you know, Carl Greaves knows his sport inside out.
I think
he does about. Sorry, Sean. He does about every role in it, Chris, don't he?
Yeah, and does it well.
Go on, Sean.
I was just going to say, I think I disagree about Boxer in some regard. I think it's sort of somewhat they've shot their load with the first 3 shows they've put on. I think
that's a term there, Sean, isn't it? Shot your load. Yeah, I'm liking that.
I think as sort of Matchroom progress through the year, I think they'll come through with the strongest still. And I think, you know, in some ways, Ben is a sort of B-Tech Eddie Hearn. From what I've seen of him so far, he seems to sort of be sort of underlining, copying him without sort of coming out with it outright, really.
But what I would say is, Sean, obviously the early days when Matchroom went over to Sky weren't particularly great when they was doing shows out of Dagenham leisure centres and such like. So I think we need to cut in some slack. You know, let him harness his craft a little bit. Whether he's got that skill in front of the camera, I don't believe he can teach it. I mean, look at Andy and Chris; you can't teach it. So time, he's going to have to give him a bit of time, aren't you, and just see where it takes him. But I think they're going to attract some very. I think it's only a matter of time for, let's call it a big name, goes from Matchroom to Boxer.
I think he'll get it. I think he'll get it. I think a lot of people thought you just needed to turn up on Sky and do it, but you know, I don't think you do. You know, but one of the things which came through from last week, the figures which came through for the Eubank fight were astounding. You know, there was over 1 million people watched Sky last week for the boxing there, and you know that's something which hasn't been done for a while on a fight which was of that level. So
very good timing though, Chris. Very good timing, because we was desperate for a decent card, weren't we, as boxing fans? You know, we've been through a dry January, so it was always going to do numbers, wasn't it?
But it's shown, though, 1 million. Eubank's obviously got that crossover appeal, hasn't he? You know, because that's not hardcore boxing fans watching that. You know, that's, you know, a lot of bums on seats watching that telly. You know, but
quickly in the sidebar, lads, Matt Nash says, I agree, Cole. Even in Dillion's best win, he gives everyone a chance against him. Can't give Fury a chance. What he's saying there is he leaves himself open quite a lot. He gets it quite a lot. You can't do that against Fury, can you? And we've got Alex Riviera's joined us all the way from Phoenix, Arizona.
And that's Alex that's joined us in the show before. Jump on, fella, if you want. The link's on the sidebar.
Yeah, Alex, shouldn't you be at work?
I think he is probably working from home today, from what I remember.
Look, Chris ain't going to defend him. It's a joke. I won't tell the boss, Alex. Don't worry.
So we're going to finish up with a little bit on Eubank's next potential opponent.
Well, just before you do that, there's one more topic that I'd like to bring up. So that is Canelo. So obviously it sounds like Canelo is very close to signing a 2-fight deal with Dazn, which is reportedly going to be in and around the 98 million mark, which is going to be obviously a fight against Bivol and then a fight against Triple G. So I just wanted to get your guys' thoughts on this. And Chris, we'll start with you from obviously with your WBF hat on from a commercial aspect. It's going to take a lot of buys and a lot of pay-per-views to start clawing any profit back in that deal, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. But Canelo's the man that sells, isn't he, at the moment? You know, and I think you've just got to look at his global appeal. You know, I think, you know, myself and Alex actually mentioned this, I think it was last night. You know, Canelo should be a mega superstar, and he just isn't. You know, and that in itself is a shame. You know, and is it because he's Mexican and he's only started to really use a few bits of English over the last few years? But you know, he should be a crossover universal star. Floyd Mayweather's still bigger than him, and it's almost unforgivable at this point in time. You know that's happening. But you know, I really like these two fights for Canelo. It's not the fights I wanted to necessarily see him in. I quite fancied the you know, I quite fancied McCabe. But
my two favourite fights. I've been calling for the Bivol one for a while. Andy will tell you.
Look at Bivol though. If we actually look at Bivol's record, say his last 6 fights or so, he's actually. I don't care.
I don't care, because I'm a believer that he fights against his opponent's level, if that makes sense. And I said that about the Richards fight. Everyone jumping up and down about him supposedly struggling against Richards. I mean, I don't know what fight they were watching. But for me, Bivol didn't even come out in neutral. So,
but I think for me, he's been that way now, as I say, in his last 6 fights, Bivol, and I actually see this as, I'm going to be controversial. I actually see this as quite an easy fight for Canelo. You know, and I think that, again, we've said that styles make fights, but for me, Bivol's quite one-paced, quite one-dimensional, and he doesn't hit as hard as people think. I think initially we thought he was a banger, but he's not got anyone out there.
I think that's been incredibly harsh on Bivol to call him one-dimensional. If he's talking about better Biev, I'd agree with you.
But if you think, well, what does Bivol do that's exceptional, which stands out?
But that goes back to my point about he fights as good as the opponents, so he drops his levels, which I'm not agreeing with, but I'm a big believer he drops his levels and does just enough to win.
But is that how you sell yourself to get a fight against?
I'm not talking about his commercial potential. I'm talking about how he fights, though. So when he jumps in with Canelo and is motivated and realises him with a killer, I think you're going to see a career best performance from Bivol. I think I'll say it now because I'm going that way. He beats Canelo.
Wow.
See, I can't even see.
I just believe he does. I think he's got the key. He's got the key to unlock that puzzle.
Nah, it's one of those fights. If Canelo can handle Kovalev the way that he did, and even though Kovalev
spent.
Callum Smith,
and he didn't look great. He didn't look great in that fight.
Right, let's bring someone with a bit of sense in. Andy, what do you think about the Bivol fight?
I think Bivol's a great boxer, but Canelo always finds a way. Always finds a way.
And do you think that Bivol is as good as we thought he was initially when he came out? Say 5 years ago, people were thinking Bivol was going to be a superstar. And
well, that's a bit of a loaded question. That's a bit of a loaded question, isn't it, Chris? You're almost telling him what you wanted to answer.
I'm sure.
Open questions, please.
I think Bivol's right up there with the best. With the best at that division.
Can I ask you a question, Andy?
Yeah.
Do you think people are sleeping on Bivol a little bit?
Do you want my honest opinion?
Yeah, that's what we're here for.
I think Callum Smith beats Bivol.
I agree.
I think Callum Smith stops Bivol. I go one even further. But other than Callum Smith, I think Bivol's the best in the division.
But has he been active enough, though?
He's over the hill. He's on the as a friend of the show would say, he's on the back nine. He's beatable as well, as he showed in his last performance. But for me, Callum Smith is the best in that division, and he's going to show it as well when he gets the opportunity.
My rationale is, and I'll let Sean come in a minute, Canelo is not the fighter at 175 that he is at 168. And he struggled against a shot Kovalev. He was shot. I know he got the job done and all that lot, blah, blah. Let's give him a round of applause because he got cherry-picked again. I'm telling you, Bivol gives him a fight.
I'm not saying
he gives him a
fight. I'll go further. Bivol will beat him, and he can record this and play it back to me. Bivol will beat him.
If we look in the sidebar, Alex, who is a Canelo fan, makes a great point. He said he doesn't think Bivol's developed and gotten any better, and not elevated himself. I kind of think I agree with him, from what we've seen, because when was the last standout performance from Bivol? Take away Spider Richards, because it kind of felt like he was going through the motions on a British card to kind of get a turnout fight after coronavirus. Did he impress against Joe Smith, John Pascal? I don't know if he really did.
Yeah, I think with Bivol,
the problem is what should have happened is him and Betoviev should have fought, and they haven't. They've stayed away from each other because they're like their own little pot.
Yeah. But is that they're doing or the promoter's doing? Because
This is what annoys me about modern day boxing. It shouldn't be about what the promoters want. It should be about the fighters should want to be the best in their division at that particular time. And the only way that could have been proved would have been them fighting each other. Yeah.
I still wanted to see Canelo come out and say he would face Makabu, then come back and fight Charlo. That was the fights I wanted to see, the two sequences. I think that would have been a much better sequence of fights. I think going in against Triple G just now, for me, it doesn't bring any sort of closure because of the kind of age and inactivity Triple G. He's not done anything of late.
But I think, Chris, the closer that fight gets, I mean, it probably won't happen because Bivol would have done him, but I'll play nicely. The closer that fight gets, I think we'll look. We're getting up for Khan and Brook, for God's sake. So why won't we get up for Canelo versus Triple G?
But Triple G's got to win first as well, hasn't he? You know, they've both got to come through their fights. Canelo
Exactly. So the likelihood is it won't happen. But just coming in the sidebar. So Matt Nash said would love to see Smith versus Bivol. Great fight that is. Zodiac is giving a smiley face with thumbs down for Callum. I'm assuming that's Callum Smith, so he's obviously not a fan. Zodiac says Bivol will lose unanimous decision or majority decision.
Amateur boxing world thinks Bivol could be a real problem, bigger risk than Triple G for Canelo. That goes without saying because he's live. He's probably in his prime now, or maybe just over his prime potentially. Alex Rivera's put Canelo's levels above Bivol. What does Bivol do great?
What time of day? They're behind us, aren't they? Because I'm sure Alex had a few whiskies.
He moves decently, and then what else?
People are sleeping on him. Simple as.
Yeah.
I'm not sure he's had that real test, Cole.
He's not.
I'm giving my explanation, haven't I? I think he'll fight better because there's a lot of boxers like this, isn't there? Where sometimes motivation's a struggle when they get in with opponents who they perceive they're going to walk over. I think Bivol.
Oh, sorry.
Go on,
I was just going to say the fighters that he's fought have probably been kind of tailor-made for Bivol, though, when you think of them as well. You know, you've got Joe Smith, who kind of comes lumbering forward. You've got Isaac Chilemba, who was pretty much faded and shot by then. You know, Jean Pascal again.
Canelo's never fought anyone who's shot, has he? No.
Well, Canelo's just been active, hasn't he? You know, we can't complain about the activity of Canelo, and I still think Caleb Plant was a live opponent, even if you know, most people don't. I think he came in there to win. Canelo stopped him from winning.
I really thought that Callum Smith would have gave Canelo a much closer fight than he did.
Yeah,
I was really surprised how one-sided that.
Yeah, me and Andy watched that together, and we thought we sat there with half a chance of an upset, didn't we, Andy? To be honest.
Well, and I think we still could have been had he not blown his bicep out very early in the fight.
Mm.
Yeah.
Would you guys have put money on that fight though?
By everybody, everyone thinks that Callum Smith was overhyped for the fight, which is a load of crap. Also, by the way, Callum Smith was struggling. You look at the size of him; he was struggling at that weight. So there was two things going on there. He was struggling at the weight, so he made the weight, but then he didn't have anything left for the fight. And then Canelo lands a massive hook, which blows Callum Smith's bicep out. Was it round 3, 2, 3, or something like that? And then he couldn't use his left hand for the rest of the fight. So he's fighting.
It was very clever by Canelo, wasn't it? Very clever boxing.
He's fighting the pound for pound best fighter on the planet with one arm.
But Canelo must be so ring aware because he goes back to his corner and he says, I think Callum Smith's arm's injured. And he said the same thing against Billy Joe Saunders, didn't he? He said his eyes gone. You know, Canelo lives the moment of boxing, but he's also sharp enough to pick up when people are injured. You know, this is a guy who at the moment is at the top of his craft. And how do you beat him? I think Callum Smith at 175 probably gives Canelo a better fight than he gave him at 168. But I still don't think he would necessarily beat him. You know, but I do think you were right with saying that Callum Smith beats Bivol. You know, that long-range jab should be enough to cause Bivol problems.
Callum Smith's a different animal at 175.
So Canelo XX1 in the sidebar said Smith didn't have much notice as well, to be frank, which is honest. He's right, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then Chris Akamusi's laugh. I know we've had a difference as Chris, but that's still a quality name. Canelo is a ninja. So I think by that he rates him. So you don't want to cover that last topic, Andy, the one that he's going to come on to is about Eubank. Yeah,
so obviously Eubank fought at the weekend. We've had differing views on this when we did the show on Saturday night. But there's a lot of people throwing the names into the hat to fight Eubank next. Eubank's obviously got his own path that he wants to take. So you've had, straight after the fight, you had Conor Benn put a tweet out saying that he'd fight Eubank at catchweight, not a problem at all. Everyone laughed at this, but there's been a video done since with Conor Benn. And this is actually being taken quite seriously by the Eubank camp. Obviously, he wants it at catchweight. He's not going to make middleweight. As you know, Carl, because you keep on saying it every time I mention him, I'm a big Conor Benn fan. But
I just think this is nonsense. It's nonsense.
let me finish before you have 10 pence worth.
Go on.
I think this is a really, really bad decision for Conor Benn.
Yeah.
Because I don't think he could stand and trade with Eubank, because I think he could. The problem is once he's moved up and fought weight, when he comes back down to welterweight again, are we going to have another Kell Brook? Because he's not going to be the same fighter when he goes back down to the weight. He needs to stay at welterweight, do his business at welterweight, and then move up when he's filled out a bit.
Cornell makes a good comment in the sidebar. Maybe Arlen Eubank versus Ben's more like that.
Yeah.
But realistically, I think it's the two guys trading off their dad's name, isn't it? And I think we've got to look at where Eubank goes now, and I would have loved to have seen him fight Triple G before that announcement by Dazn. So I think that he's probably lost opportunity for Triple G. I think, and I'm going to be, not on the fence here at all. I think, weirdly, what I've seen from Chris Eubank on Saturday, he would beat Triple G, but I don't think he stands any chance against DiCarlo. And I think for me, it's styles make fights again. And I think the way that Eubank, if he can box for the first 4 rounds, like he did against Williams for a longer period, I could really see him getting to the point where he could actually start doing some damage to Triple G, because Triple G's last few fights, he's actually busted up quite a bit. His face is swollen. He's got a couple of cuts recently. And, I can kind of see that fight for Eubank, not necessarily going the same way as Williams, but it wouldn't be an easy fight, don't get me wrong. But, Triple G will have his moments, could potentially floor him. But I could see that Eubank winning that fight. But with him now tied up with Canelo and Morata, where does Eubank go? I've got no defined path for Chris Eubank at this moment in time.
Just bringing it back to the question again, Andy. It's just nonsense. They're both on the verge of both on the verge of going for a world title shot, aren't they?
If you look at
it's a non-starter. I mean, to be fair, Sauerland and Eddie Hearn says there's been, nothing been put across their desk, and they both manage him. So,
if you look at the rankings, the current middleweight rankings, Eubank is number 1 with the WBA, which is Morata's belt.
Yeah,
is number 5 with the WBO, which is currently Andrade's belt, however you pronounce his name. But Andrade is looking like he's moving up to super middleweight, because
he will move up, won't he?
And he's likely to be fighting Zach Parker.
Yeah,
for the number 1 spot, the WBO spot, which is a great fight. So does that then mean he vacates the middleweight belt? And if he does Eubank get a shot at that? Interestingly, he's not even in the top 10 for the IBF, which is Triple G's belt. So he's wanting the Triple G fight when he's not even in the top 10 on the rankings.
Yeah.
But the other 3 rankings is highly ranked.
Yeah, I wouldn't look into the rankings too much. If the fight was made, he would suddenly appear. We've kind of seen that before.
Take into consideration, mate, because for him to get a fight like that, it's either going to mean that someone has to step aside that's mandatory, or someone's going to pay someone else a lot of money. So you do have to look at the rankings a little bit. My honest opinion is he'll get a shot at the WBO title when that gets vacated.
Well, you think of the link to his dad. You know, his dad defended the super middleweight title just under 20 times, was the WBO middleweight champion as well, which he won against Ben. So there'd almost be a nice bit of romantic feel to that fight in a way.
Well, it's not the first time we've had rose-tinted glasses on, is it?
The question is, who does he fight for the belt?
Exactly. You know, is he given someone who's... I thought his performance was decent on Saturday, you know, and there's a lot to be made about, you know, his hand injury. He didn't carry Williams. He couldn't finish him. You know, that's the be all and end all of it. You know, I think if he could have took him out, he would have. I don't buy into the fact he carried him over the last few rounds.
No,
he was also injured.
rubbish.
You know, and he did say he thought he injured his hand maybe about the 4th to 6th round or so.
Sean, what do you think of Eubank?
Yeah, I mean, he's a hard one to judge, really, isn't he? I mean, on one hand, you can say he's impressive, but he doesn't help himself. You know how he done the last 6 rounds of the fight. I listened to Spencer Oliver on TalkSport, and he thinks he'll win a vacant world title, and I agree. But I don't think he'll have anywhere near as his dad did at world level. And I think, you know, as soon as a top fighter he boxes, he'll come unstuck, because I don't think...
Let's be honest, Sean. Sean, both fighters are pound shot versions of the dad, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
That's unfair, because what would we be saying if they didn't have that secondary name? You know, like Conor Benn, they wouldn't have got the opportunity, first of all, let's be fair on that one. They wouldn't have got the opportunity and be in this situation in the first place. But take that aside, if they were their own men, as it were, standing as they were, and they were called, you know, Connor Smith and, you know, Chris Smith, you know, we would actually be saying these guys are decent quality fighters. You know, they suffer due to their surname. You know, and I think Eubank showed a lot of poise in the first, especially the first 4 rounds on Saturday. He was timing his shots well, he was countering his shots well. But then what he did, say if you look at him in the 12th round, he ran more than Oscar De La Hoya did against Tito. You know, he almost circled that ring, you know, and never threw a punch for the last 2 minutes. It was actually disgraceful, the last round.
I agree. I think one thing with, you know, with Conor Benn is you have to praise him. The way he's come on since when he fought in your call when he got put down in that fight. I mean, he's come on leaps and bounds from where he was, looking like a novice. Yeah. I think you can really tell he's trying to improve, and he's given the sport serious sport. So I think with Conor Benn, it's a bit different. You can actually give him praise for what he's at least trying to do.
But you can still give Eubank Junior praise as well. You know, even though the guys don't rate his performance against Abraham, you know, I thought he done well against Abraham. He beat James DeGale. James DeGale had beat Caleb Plant. You know, not a big name, not a great name. But, you know, James DeGale was still a world title holder, effectively, when Eubank beat him.
Spent though, wasn't he, Chris?
Absolutely. And there's that, you know, after the Badou Jack fight, you know, one could actually say, should James DeGale ever even have caught in the ring again?
No, of course you shouldn't. And that's why Eubank took the fight.
Yeah, yeah.
So in the sidebar, Chris Akabusis Laugh says Liam Smith versus Eubank would be a banger. Matt Nash, agree again, Carl. Can't see it happening. Far too much weight between Eubank and Ben. Matt Nash says Ben uses time out of the ring really well. Looks like he's put time into his craft. So, yeah, I'm not sure where Eubank... I agree. I think you'll pick up a vacant Eubank. I do.
But what do we think of him as a fighter? You know, you sit back and you think, you still don't know. Is he just a guy that can throw a couple of punches and throw and burst?
Well, the problem, we talked about this, and me and Cole got a bit heated as it showed on the show on Saturday night. I don't think Eubank can fight for 12 rounds. He goes on about how great his engine is. When did he last fight for 12 rounds? He doesn't. He fights in bursts. So when he comes up against somebody that's going to put it on him for 12 rounds,
yeah,
when he falls short, this is why he doesn't win at world level. He will probably win a vacant version of a belt, but does that make him world class if he's not fought against, if he's not won that title against somebody that's world class?
I suppose it depends on the definition of world class. Are we saying someone in the top 10 in the world's world class? Or are we saying that, you know, someone you've got to be in this kind of top 5 to be world class?
He's somebody that's world class to be world class.
It's in the eye of the beholder a little bit, because I'd argue Paul Smith was world class, but he never won a world title because he got robbed.
He did get robbed against Arthur Abraham. And by the way, that was a prime Arthur Abraham. He beat him in that first fight.
Yeah. Well, how many years between that and when the others fought him? You're talking years, aren't you?
But you know that Arthur Abraham, after the weigh-in against Paul Smith, downed a pint of lager.
What's that got to do with anything?
That's how serious Arthur Abrahams took Paul Smith.
Come on, Chris.
Yeah,
Come on.
Paul Smith beat him though, Chris.
I'm not saying he didn't, and I'm like, if you actually watch the fight back, the uppercuts that Paul Smith was throwing in that fight were fantastic, you know, and he boxed really, really well and above what we all thought he could. But I'm just saying, it is well documented what Abrahams did there. So, you know, was he a prime Arthur Abrahams? The guy drunk a pint of lager immediately after the weigh and then fought the next day. You know, that's...
Well, how many pints was Tyson Fury drinking when he was fighting people and he still took them seriously?
Well, I think Fury is even famously still steaming, wasn't he, when he took him?
He wasn't his prime when he fought Paul Smith, unlike Eubank. Arthur Abraham could barely walk in that Eubank fight.
I think prime Arthur Abraham was at middleweight because he had that massive long reign at IBF middleweight champion. Then when he stepped up to the WBO super middleweight, I was never 100% convinced again he was a proper super middleweight. So was he at prime for me? Probably not. But I think Arthur Abrahams was a middleweight. You know, then his career after he got that horrible mouth injury against Edison Miranda, his career kind of dipped a little bit. You know, he was never the same after that.
But remember, you could level that with Paul Smith as well, because he operated at middleweight for a fair majority of his career as well.
Like Smigger, decent fighter, you know, but he's a guy who never fulfilled his potential, did he? You guys know him better than me. I certainly would never criticise him. You know, I think he's a...
I'll be brutally honest with you, Chris. I think he was just in a tougher era than we are now. If you think about the fighters that are around in his era, he was in amongst killers. So timing's everything a little bit. What would Paul Smith in his prime do in this era?
I don't think he was a world level fighter. You seen what happened when George Groves went in there against him when James DeGale went in, what was it, 9th round and 2nd round stoppage respectively. You know, he wasn't a world level fighter, you know.
To be fair a little bit though, Chris, that was the latter part of Paul Smith's career.
Yeah.
And another point I'd make is what would them two fighters, as in DeGale in his prime and George Groves in his prime, do in this era now? It's not as good an era, is it? Let's be brutally honest.
In what weight?
In super middle, especially.
Well, we've got an undisputed champion in Canelo. I think we've probably got a really strong weight at the moment.
But underneath that, then, where do you go?
Apart from Canelo, there's an argument that the super middleweight division is one of the worst in boxing. Because the level after that, after Canelo, what you got then? You've got blown up middleweights fighting Canelo at super middleweight because there's no one else to fight him. Billy Joe Saunders moves up to super middleweight. He's not a super middleweight.
But in saying that, though, we devalue what Canelo's done over the last, you know, because what he really did, you know, he cleaned out the super middleweight division. He's made Smith move up. He's had, you know, Caleb Plant there. He's had Billy Joe Saunders, you know.
Would he have done that? Would he be able to clean up like that when you had Froch, Kozagi and Kessler around?
Do you know what? If we had Froch there, I don't even know if he would have stepped up.
No, he probably would not.
Simple as that.
Because it's a much tougher task.
Exactly, and it doesn't take...
In my opinion, a prime...
Let me just get his comment in from the side. Chris Akamusi put, even I'm number 6 in super middleweight, leave me alone, Edda.
Even in my opinion, a prime George Groves is better than everyone apart from Canelo at super middleweight at the minute.
Give me that again, because you know I'm a George Groves fan. Give me that again.
I'm a George Groves fan. I'm not a George... Obviously...
No, I didn't hear you. What did you say? Is what?
I think a prime George Groves beats everyone in this era at super middleweight apart from Canelo.
But a prime George Groves couldn't beat Barry Jack. A prime George Groves just eked past James DeGale. You know, I love George Groves, don't get me wrong. He was one of my favourite fighters. I went and seen him fight multiple occasions.
He fought James DeGale.
he was about 12-0 or something like that, but he was getting there. I think George Grove's a great fighter, but he's not one. He's not going to make the top 10 super middleweights of all time, is he?
No, of course he's not. But the point I'm not saying is one of the best, but what I'm saying is even a prime George Groves that isn't 10.
Andy, another way to spin it is name me a super middleweight that's active at the minute apart from Canelo that beats Groves in his prime.
None of them. And we you just said there that he isn't in amongst the best of that era. You saw what Froch did to him in the second fight when Froch took him seriously.
I think that
Canelo, although I believe Canelo is the best fighter of his generation, he's proved that. But he's in a very, very good position where he's got a division and he hasn't had to work hard at winning the titles at the division. He's fought a weight drained Smith. He took the other belt off of what's his name, Rocky Fielding, who had lost the fight before he went in the ring.
Should never have been in the ring.
He should never have been there. He might as well just give him the belt. And then you got the situation with Billy Joe, who's not really a super middleweight.
But then in saying that, though, neither, as Canelo, he could probably still make, maybe 162 a push, maybe not 160.
Yeah. Well, doesn't that show how poor era it is then, Chris, that he can dance around the weights like he's doing?
No, I think the super middleweight's always been a very strong weight because it's probably 12 stones naturally the size of a man, isn't it, really? So I think we'll always get a really strong middleweight and super middleweight, light heavyweight division because of that. It's just men average at about 6 foot, and they probably comfortably fit in when they're fit into that level. So I actually think it's a decent division. It always has been. It's very rare that the super middleweight division's weak.
So who excites at super middle? Benavidez, possibly.
David Benavidez, what does he need to do? He needs to clean his act up a little bit first, doesn't he? He needs to, stop snorting the white stuff and, just get back in the ring and actually make himself a presence. He's got the size and stature to actually be a decent fighter.
So who else then? And the fact that you're having to think about it like that really suggests that it's not a great division at the minute.
No, I think at one point you'll get the Charlo, will move up to super, because he'll just need to. That's where his frame's going.
They're not there yet, are they? So
no, they're not there yet. But look, you asked who excites me at super middleweight. It is Canelo.
I mean, the thing is as well, what you got to think is these guys that are going to be moving up to super middleweight are not even kings in their own way. They're not kings at middleweight. Andrade's not fought any of the champions, but he's moving up already. What does that tell you?
Does Andrade excite himself?
Yeah, it's like me.
But he's middleweight. It would probably be the second best super middleweight because that's how poor the division is.
John, what do you think of the super middleweight at the minute?
Yeah, I think it's the weakest it's been for a while. I mean, you had Kessler, Froch, Kozagi, all there at one point, and that was possibly the strongest it's been. I think if you're talking about the real hot divisions in boxing at the minute, it has to be sort of 147 for me. And I think other than heavyweight, that's probably where all the big fights are, really.
What do you think of the Ugas Spence fight? That's got a bit of excitement there, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I think Spence will win. I think the fight we all want to see is him and Crawford. If that will happen, who knows? But I think Ugas in a way, he's there for a payday. I mean, I can't see him being competitive really. I think, as I say, Spence and Crawford is the one that we all want to see, isn't it? At 147.
Absolutely.
The welterweight division is the division in boxing right now.
If they fight each other.
That's the problem. Well, this is what I was just about to say. You've got a situation where the two best in the division don't want to fight each other, and it's not likely to happen. Spence, we still don't know what Spence has got left.
No.
I mean, by all rights, he shouldn't have walked away from that accident, but he has. He's come back to boxing, and he just doesn't seem the same person. He doesn't seem the confident person that he was. I'm not sure. I mean, he probably beats Ugas because I don't believe Ugas is a very good champion. Crawford's the man in that division right now, but you've got so many stars in the making.
Last week, obviously, Keith Thurman came back. You know, he was calling them all out last week, but I never seen enough. Never seen enough from him to actually say he'll be a threat in the division again.
I can't.
He's so inactive as well. You know, I was looking back at Keith Thurman's record. I'd seen him in Vegas in, I think, 2014 against a guy called Leonard Bundu. It shocked me. He's only fought 6 times since then. You know, he's been so inactive. It's been unbelievable. You know, and yeah, he went away, toured the world, got married, did whatever, had some injuries. But nah, I just can't see him being a player in the division again, Thurman.
That unfortunately, mate, is the story of American fighters.
Yeah.
They get paid gigantic amounts of money for one fight, and then they just lose motivation.
And momentum. Yeah. There's no momentum in American boxing. There's no momentum whatsoever, be it because of boxing politics or promotional issues, TV deals. There's just no momentum. Tell me last time an American fighter fought 3 times in a year.
It don't happen, does it?
It's ridiculous.
You make a good point about Thurman, because he was one of the ones that was signed to PBC, and he was getting like $1 million purses for fighting average people, you know, and
he gives them no hunger to fight the best. Why would you need to fight the best? If you're getting paid £1 million to fight bums, and let's have it right, that's what they are. They're certainly not. They don't infringe world level. Some of the fighters he's been in with. If you get £1 million to fight them, why would you want to fight that division for an?
He fought better people than bums. You know, his record. He fought Roberto Guerrero, Collazo, who fought Ricky Hatton, Sean Porter, Danny Garcia, Josecito Lopez is probably the weakest one that he fought. Then Pacquiao schooled him. You know, he's fought decent people, but he's never excited really Keith Thurman since the early part of his career.
And do you know why that is, Chris? That is poor promotional work. Nobody knows his story. Nobody knows his narrative. There's been no exposure to him as a boxer.
And you've already said it as well, Chris. Inactivity.
Inactivity is a killer. Because people were buying his story.
He may have been a much better fighter if he'd have fought 2 or 3 times a year, kept himself active, kept himself sharp. He could have been a much better fighter.
But I think he's one of these guys who is also quite intelligent outside the ring, Keith Thurman. He plays weirdly the trumpet. He likes art. He likes to do various different things which are crossover, and that's what, like, his wife. He met his wife in Thailand or something like that, or Indonesia. You know, so he's got different interests. Boxing's not his life, and I think that probably shows in his performances.
Yeah.
But I've said it before, Hunter, about American boxing promotion standards. They're just archaic in a lot of views. You know, American promotional work used to be the flagship bearer of boxing promotions like Don King. He'd walk into a room and he'd light the room up. Even on this side of the Atlantic, before social media and everything, would know about a Tyson fight. And it would do big numbers in the UK. But it's all gone to pot, hasn't it? You know, I mean, what did Bob Arum do for Tyson Fury's profile? It's Tyson who's a mouthpiece.
Yeah, he is. Absolutely.
You've not. Don King was the Eddie Earn of his time, and he's not a promoter in America that is the same talker that Don King was. And to say that Americans all talk. Americans all give you a good yarn and tell you how great they are, but there's not a single one of them that doing it in the boxing world. No. The fighters have to promote themselves.
And it was quite a shame, actually, to see Don King. You know, they're now saying that was his last promotion the other week there. You know, and
Trevor Bryan.
Yeah, you know, what a way to go out. You know, what a way to go out. But anyway, there we go.
I think ABC, really. I think Sean Porter, if we're sticking at the welterweights a minute, I think him commentating and doing his analysis, that's what pushed him on from the BBC because you can't tell me they push their fighters or promote their fighters. It's just an in-house propaganda, really. And I think Sean Porter really stuck out from his TV work. Why he's such a big name. He's even still among the welterweights, really.
I mean, coming on to Josh Taylor for 1 minute when he won all the belts, all the marbles. Yes, we blame the British media for not picking that story up, but if his promotional company was as good at what they do, the British media would have had no choice but to report it because his profile would have been so high. So, again, what a top rank doing for Josh Taylor? They've got somebody there who's got all the keys to the kingdom. Is a ready-made star not only in Scotland but in the UK. They've just signed a Sky deal with UK shows on. Join the dots up, for God's sake. I know they're going to broadcast his fight, but I don't see Top Man doing a lot of work with him.
Nah.
Just beggars belief a little bit.
Almost feels like lip service. We'll sign him, but what have they done? As you say, absolutely not done anything for him.
So in the sidebar, Chris Akamu's laugh says, Ali and Tyson made nearly $1 billion. Not Don's fault. Tyson blew it all. Well, to be fair, a certain Mr. Glazer gave us a story on that on one of the videos. If you want to check it out on the channel. Matt Nash, 100% card. Imagine if Irv promoted Taylor. That would be a match made in heaven if Josh Taylor was with Eddie Hearn, because he would absolutely publicise the hell out of him. In my view.
What do you pro Bellum promotion since that's come out recently? How do you think that will all go?
Well, what's the interesting thing is about 10 seconds after Liam Williams got his ass handed to him at the weekend, Pro Bellum signed him straight away.
Yeah,
which is very, very bizarre. Not quite sure what Pro Bellum are trying to achieve. Are they just going for ticket sellers rather than... Because it looks like they're picking up fighters that are a bit down on the luck, that have had a few losses, that maybe have something to prove, but they seem to be ticket sellers. Because obviously, Liam Williams did massive numbers at the weekend. It was a raucous crowd, maybe a little bit too raucous at times, but it was a raucous crowd. I can't really point my finger on Pro Bellum's direction.
No, and they've not got a TV network, have they, either, really?
Not yet, and they're kind of still working on that. But we were saying the other day privately when we were on WhatsApp, it seems like they're signing regional fighters. They signed Ricky Burns, Tick. There you've got Scotland. They signed Lewis Ritson. There's the northeast. Then they've got Liam Williams. There's Cardiff. The shows they've put on so far have been over in Dubai as well as Sunderland. They just don't excite. I expected more from Schaefer. We've not seen it yet. It just feels like a big name without a direction, doesn't it, in terms of Pro Bellum? I just don't see where he goes with it, but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, what I would say, they've got a very, very strong corporate side to Pro Bellum. When you look at some of their who's on their board and such like, I think they will become major players. I think they're just building, aren't they? I think they've got some very shrewd people on the commercial side. I think they're saying, let's take some baby steps and let's build the brand. They've got Paul Smith in front of the camera doing his bit as well. So I think slowly but surely they'll start to make some moves in the boxing in the boxing landscape. A lot of connection with Africa and other territories. Where they do
really well. That's what they're doing really well. That other promoters don't do is they stay completely away from America. And they're picking up these other territories that could be massive. Could be massive with the right fighter.
Yeah. So just in the sidebar, Chris Akamu's laughs mentioned Rick Glazer. So I've mentioned how we've had Rick on the show a few times, friend of the show. And to be fair, Chris Akamu's laugh said, I've not been here for ages. I troll normally. No shit, Chris. But Rick is a legend to me. I'm shocked. He's shocked about what, Chris, that we have him on, because we've had him on a few times, very outspoken. So just put in the comments what you mean by it, because we're due to have another Rick on again. Matt Nash just put, if Probellum can get a decent UK TV deal, it would make them very appealing in this country.
Yeah, you got to agree with that. It'd be interesting to see what they do. It's like you've just said, Carl. They're getting the ducks in a row, and then all of a sudden, I think they're probably working on a TV deal somewhere. They're probably working on maybe a joint venture with somebody. Are they gonna pop up on BT? Are they gonna do things? You just never know with the way the BT platform is going to be playing out. It's not going to be the same as it was.
No. For me, Richard Schaefer, who's behind Probellum, was the best in boxing for a while. When he was with Golden Boy, he ran boxing. He was the most influential person in boxing. I've always liked him. I think he's a great asset. A Swiss banker by trade. He was the man. And when he left Golden Boy, they kind of fell apart for a while. And at one point, as we said before in the show, Oscar De La Hoya, was reliant solely on Canelo, for his income. And I don't think Golden Boy had any direction when Schaefer left. So I hope to see Schaefer back again, because I think, as I say, boxing missed him.
Yeah.
All I would say, again, I know I made the point, but they've got some very shrewd people involved behind the scenes from the private industry sector.
Absolutely.
So I'd be amazed if they don't. They're obviously going to run it as a slightly different business model, aren't they, Chris? Where they're going to build it slowly rather than throw a shed load of money at it and hope it works.
But they're obviously going and picking their shows wisely, and as I say, going over to Dubai for like Sonny Edwards and things, They're going over there and making sure they're probably not losing money as well.
Yeah. Chris Akabuzi laugh. Rick is very selective. Who interviews him? So he's saying it's amazing that we got him on the channel. He genuinely means that. Like I said, Chris, he's been on at least 3 times. He might even be more. I think he loves the rawness of the show. So maybe next time we'll have him on, come in the sidebar and ask him some questions. Sensible ones if you got the bottle.
Matt Nash has put the coverage on Premier Sports with Probellum at the minute is not great. They need a big platform, don't they?
They do. They'll get it.
Yeah, Rome wasn't built in a day.
Right. And they're looking like, when they're picking fighters, they're picking fighters that have taken losses, that look like they've got something to prove, and the decent ticket sellers. If you look at where they're picking the fighters, it's very strategic, isn't it? Northeast, Wales, all these areas that absolutely love the boxing, and have great loyalty from people in the area. They have great loyalty towards their own, very, very loyal fans. Might be a really good tactic.
Yeah. So, Sean, we'll give the last word to you, fellas. Anything that you want to have a quick chat about, or any topic that we've not covered that you'd want to cover before we bring it to a close?
No, I think that's everything, actually. It's been a really good chat, and thanks for having me on. I really enjoyed it.
No, you're welcome anytime, fella. Great debut. I'll give you 8 out of 10 because I won't want your head to grow any bigger. But no, really enjoyed having you on, fella. So, like I said, we do this every week, so feel free to join us. And we also go live after large cards as well. Won't be this Saturday because we don't consider it a large card, to be honest. But like I said, we normally go live straight after big cards as well. So thank you to everyone inside. Chris Akabuzi's laugh. Nice to see you make some sensible comments for once, to be honest. You're free to welcome you back anytime when you've got your sensible head on. Matt Nash. Sure you come down after Forest winning at the weekend. Very lucky again, but we'll cover that another day.
No, they weren't lucky. They were great.
Great comments inside. Everyone else in the sidebar, thank you very much for your contribution, including Alex. Get back to work. Chris, cheers for joining us, fella. Straight in from work, so we do appreciate you jumping on at short notice. And we'll phone you, don't you, phone us. And that's it. Have a good evening, everybody. Like, comment, subscribe. We go live again next Thursday at 7 o'clock. If you've not checked videos out on the channel, check them out. We've got people like Paul Smith Jr., Lee Wood, and many more, to be honest. Rick Glazer a few times, Roberto Diaz, to name a few. So check the channel out, like, comment, subscribe. See you next week.